Taking someone to court can be a lot like playing a game of Monopoly. Winning can take a long time. It requires strategy and good fortune. Now in Monopoly, everyone understands the things you win hold no value in the real world. Turns out, for many courtroom winners, the papers they are awarded can be just about as worthless.
In 2009, Howard Saunders rolled the dice
I hurt myself at work.
when he sued an old boss for 2 accidents that left him disabled and nearly broke.
It changed me, it changed me mentally and physically.
And while Saunders won a $500,000 default judgment in the case, the ruling marked the start of a long odyssey trying to recover that cash.
Did you think when you won you were going to get a check, that it was going to be...
Oh, I thought I would get something.
You see, 4 years after the verdict, Saunders hasn't seen a dime. Today, he's closer to bankruptcy than he is passing go.
Running out of options,
Half the victory is actually recovering what the court has declared you're legally entitled to.
Edward Cantu is a professor at the UMKC School of Law. He says an estimated 80% of people who win judgments end up like Saunders. Instead of landing on boardwalk, they simply crap out trying to collect.
People assume that if they've won a judgment, that means that the court is going to somehow force the defendant right there on the spot to write a check for the judgment amount. And of course, that's not how it works.
As Cantu explains things, getting your money is kind of like starting a whole new game. You go back to court, this time asking a judge for something called a writ of execution, which basically means
the court orders a law enforcement officer, usually the sheriff, to seize property of the defendant and to sell it at auction in order to satisfy the judgment.
Now, that doesn't allow sheriff deputies in every case to go and take a defendant's car, wedding rings, or all the money in his bank account. Some property is exempt from seizure. Besides, some defendants just don't own much.
We find most people get frustrated is around the $2,000 or $3,000 mark.
Lieutenant Kelly Bailiff is with the Wyandotte County Sheriff. She says when judgments are small and defendants are broke, plaintiffs can also try to garnish wages.
You do have to know where they work. You got to do a little homework, but you can find that out pretty quickly.
Thank goodness for the internet. These days it's often easy to Google somebody, find out where they work.
Cantu considers the internet a treasure chest of information.
I think this information is in fact most relevant to people who win small claims judgments.
Especially for people trying to collect without the help of a lawyer. Because while you can play Monopoly without reading the rules, going to court is a different story.
The courts nowadays are generally good at providing standardized and simple forms that allow the average person to pursue execution without a lot of expert knowledge.
It is a lengthy process. It takes up a lot of our deputies' time.
Because sheriff deputies aren't bill collectors, going to court to enlist law enforcement help comes at a cost.
The fees can run anywhere from between $50 and $150 depending on the jurisdiction.
Forking out that money doesn't guarantee defendant will pay up. If that ends up being the case, Cantu says plaintiff might have one last chance.
Plaintiffs can often sell their judgments from anywhere between 5 to 20 cents on the dollar.
But who would buy a judgment that you have failed to collect on? Cantu says there are a handful of law firms and collection agencies.
And the reason why they get so little is because they're very seldom actually collected, especially small claims judgments.
Still in pain and tired of the collection game, Saunders is ready to sell, realizing he'll probably only see a few $1,000s for a judgment that should have turned his life around.
Something is better than nothing, Zero, anything is better than zero.
Now, if you're playing fair in Monopoly and you lose, you pay up. But in real life, there are still several ways a defendant can try and duck payment, like filing for bankruptcy or trying to transfer assets. And that's why Professor Cantu says if you win a judgment in court, you shouldn't play around. Try to collect immediately. Stacey Cameron, KCTV 5 News.